Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar Agri-footprint 3.0 and SimaPro 8.4. My name is Elena Kukuna from Blonk Consultants, and I will be talking today about the Agri-footprint database, an agri-food database developed by Blonk Consultants, and the availability of this database in the LCA software SimaPro, which is developed by Pre-Consultants. Therefore, during this presentation, together with Paula Bernstein from Pre-Consultants. Good morning, good afternoon, Paula, sorry. It's good morning for you, actually.
Yes, I'm in Washington, D.C., so it's my morning for here.
Maybe we can briefly introduce ourselves before we start the presentation.
Great. Yeah, so sure, I can go first. I'm Paula. I'm a consultant with Prey Sustainability. I work in our Washington, D.C. office, and I'm part of our database team. So I work on getting all of our databases like Agri-footprint into SimaPro.
Very nice, thank you. So as for me, I'm at Blonk Consultants for a few years now, working on several projects, carbon footprint and LCA related for the industry and for organizations. And together with a group of colleagues, we are constantly working on improving and expanding our the Agri-footprint database, which is a flagship product of Blonk Consultants. At Blonk Consultants, we are internationally involved in the sectors of sustainability, environment, and health. And I will later on say a few more things about our company. So in regards to the agenda for today, Paula will first introduce Pre-Consultants and what is new in SimaPro. Then I will introduce Agri-footprint database, and I will pass it again over to Paula in order to get a live demonstration of Agri-footprint in SimaPro. And while coming to the end, I will say a few things about LCA practices in general, and in the end there will be time for answering your questions. So there is usually a lot of traffic in the question box, so we will try to address your questions throughout this presentation. Just as an information, both presentations and Q&As will be shared with you afterwards. So, yeah, Paula, please go ahead.
Okay, did you want to...
I will pass you the presentation, right?
Okay, great. So you can see my screen. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Paula, and I'm a consultant at Prey Sustainability. For those of you who don't know us, at Prey, we put the metrics behind sustainability. We use our industry knowledge to help clients with sustainability metrics, and we've been doing so for over 25 years. So here are the three main consulting areas we focus on, and today we're going to be specifically talking about delivery of LCA databases in our software package, SimaPro. So we're the developers of the SimaPro software, as most of you probably already know. It's the world's most widely used LCA software, used in more than 80 countries with over 3,000 users. We have partners all over the world, including Blonk, who we're presenting here with us today. And we're so thrilled that our SimaPro user community is active and participates in all kinds of discussion lists, research, forums, listservs, and webinars, just like this one. So you're probably wondering, so what's new in our last release of SimaPro, which is SimaPro 8.4. So for what's new, the most obvious update is the update to the look and feel, which I think you'll get a better sense of in the live demo if you haven't already seen it already. We feel it's been a bit more modernized, and things have been moved and added and changed around. It's nothing major, nothing that I don't think anybody would be confused about. Some of the buttons have changed. Some of the fields have moved to different areas. The comment field is now at the top instead of the bottom of the window. Yeah, so there's a screenshot here. But yeah, I think the demo will show it a lot better. There's some new buttons here on top. And there are no major updates to the software, just a few bug fixes and improvements. In terms of database updates, the main update was Agri-footprint, which we're going to discuss in more detail later on this call, more thoroughly. In addition to the update to Agri-footprint, we had added 11 new data sets to the industry library, and those were from Plastics Europe. And then we just corrected some minor issues related to water flows in the US LCI library. And then, so we have some big updates to the methods. I think a lot of people were excited that we added recipe 2016. This is a separate method, so we didn't update the old recipe, but the older recipe version is now in the superseded folder, and this method was implemented as a brand new method just because there are a lot of changes and differences compared to the previous method, so we thought it made more sense to implement it separately. UseTalks 2 was also added as a new method, and here about 600 new substances have been added, and we also updated the existing characterization factors. At this time, this method doesn't include normalization, but it includes midpoint and endpoint calculations. And then last, we made a small update to the where method so that it now includes all unspecified water flows, which makes for just a more complete characterization. And yeah, I pass it back to you to give more details about Agri-footprint.
Very good. Great. So I will start with an introduction to the Agri-footprint database. For those not familiar with Agri-footprint is a high quality and comprehensive life cycle inventory database focused on the agriculture and food sector. The database was first released in 2014 when it became available in SimaPro. In 2015, we had the second release, and earlier this year, we released Agri-footprint version 3, which is available in both SimaPro and OpenLCA. And later this year, we are planning to publish Agri-footprint 4.0, including some new data sets. And finally, we expect to release Agri-footprint version 5 in 2018. So here is the team of the database developers. We are currently 7 people behind Agri-footprint development, working on several topics. And now I would like to say a few words about our company. At Blonk Consultants, we are currently a team of 11 people, and the company was founded in 1999 by Hans Blonk and has been always active on the sustainability of the agri-food sector. Within our core activities are research and consulting, the performance of carbon footprinting and LCA studies, the development of tools and databases, the sustainable business management and reporting, and we are also active on the optimization of diets in terms of health and sustainability. At Blonk, we are also organizing trainings and courses. And yeah, Agri-footprint database is one of the products we have been developing and extensively using throughout our projects. So let's see. I think this brings me to a video. Yeah, we have actually prepared a video for Agri-footprint. So I would like to share with you this animation. It lasts 2 minutes, and it will give you an impression of the Agri-footprint database.
The challenge of making the global production and consumption of food more sustainable is becoming increasingly urgent. The growing world population and the even faster growing demand for environmentally intensive products is leading to the destruction of natural capital. Tens of thousands of researchers and business people analyze the agri-food system. Life cycle assessment is the method to quantify the environmental impact of products. It studies the entire life cycle of a specific product, from raw materials to distribution and waste disposal. More and more companies and organizations are tracking their environmental performance to disclose their effort, all to make the change to a sustainable and healthy society and proclaim their relevant contribution. Reliable and up-to-date data are key to achieving this. However, until recently, information, data, and data sets were of poor quality, scattered, or outdated. That's why we've created Agri-footprint. Agri-footprint is a platform which compiles, evaluates, and maintains environmental data. Agri-footprint provides you with good data on environmental performance, which is key to developing better strategies and sustainable agri-food systems. It gives you access to data sets and tools to make assessments on better performance easy. And it facilitates a platform to display environmental performance of products and sectors. We select the best public data sources and methodologies. We cooperate with associations and companies to share data. We make sure that the data will be brought to global users. And we're always looking for new cooperatives and partners. Let's make the change to a sustainable and healthy society. Become part of the movement and share your data. Visit agrifootprint.com for more information.
Okay. I hope you like that. Now the next slide is about why did we develop Agri-footprint. So firstly, there has been always the need to facilitate transparency on the environmental issues and to sustainably transform food supply chains. So that was the problem definition, so to say. However, there was no food-specific LCI database available, and the data was scattered and often not public. So looking at the developments also of the time, 25% of all LCA studies had been agri-food related, while the development of the product environmental footprint project by the European Union made the need for a good quality agri-food database more prominent. So this had been driving forces to the development of Agri-footprint. What is also important to mention is that there was no opportunity to publish company-specific data before, while with such a database, companies could now also disclose their own data. Now, a few things about Agri-footprint. Agri-footprint includes more than 5,000 products and processes. So there you can find the cultivation of different crops for different countries of production, processed crops and intermediate products, feed compounds and food products, as well as animal production systems. All these processes are provided for 3 different allocation methods. So we are including mass, energy, and economic allocation. Moreover, the impact of land use change is fully integrated and calculated based on the direct land use change assessment tool, which has been developed by Blonk consultants. And this is a worksheet that calculates the greenhouse gas emissions due to the land use change. If you're interested about the land use change tool, you can read more about it in the link that I have provided here. And via this link, you can also purchase the tool. Now, transparency matters. Transparency is important in the LCA community, and Agri-footprint is a transparent database with publicly available documentation. It has been critically reviewed by external parties. For instance, version 1.0 was reviewed by the RMIT University, and version 2.0 was reviewed by IBM. It is a consistent with life cycle impact assessment methods such as ILCD and RECIPE, and it is widely accepted and used by the food industry, the LCA, and the scientific community, as well as governments worldwide. You can use Agri-footprint for several purposes. So to conduct to conduct carbon footprints, hotspot analysis, environmental product declarations, product environmental footprint screenings, comparative or non-comparative product life cycle assessments, and you can also use Agri-footprint to define sustainable nutrition. And as we already saw earlier, it is a database that it has been frequently updated. Okay, so this slide is mostly for people that haven't worked with Agri-footprint. So it gives an overview of the different inputs modeled within the database. Within Agri-footprint, the production systems are modeled from cradle to gate, which means that the processed foods, for instance, are not in the scope. With regards to data quality, the data is coming from publicly available sources and methodologies, as well as from company-specific data. And now a bit more on the inventory. In the cultivation process, we consider the production of seeds, the main machinery and infrastructure required, the energy consumption in the field, as well as the use of irrigation water. We also include the production of manure and emissions due to application, as well as production and application of fertilizers and pesticides. We are also including transportation modes and emissions due to logistics. And finally, the land occupation and the impact due to land use change are also included. The pre-treatment and processing of crops, of course, is also part of our database. So what's new in Agri-footprint version 3? To begin with, the geographical scope has been expanded, which I will also illustrate later. We have expanded also the cultivation inventory, so the production of seeds at the pre-cultivation stage have been included. We have also included some basic capital goods such as tractors and silos, and we have also added the pesticide production. Moreover, the processing scope has somewhat been expanded as well, with the addition of processes such as groundnuts cultivation, ethanol production, and fish meal and oil production. In this version, you can also find company-specific data of Vitens for the production of humic acids. And we are also using the most recent FAO statistics for crop yields and manure application, and the most recent land use change tool, as well as statistics on fertilizer consumption per country from the International Fertilizer Association. And finally, we have also worked on the correction of some small errors and bugs and the addition of some minor flows. So looking at Agri-footprint in numbers and how it has developed since the first release in 2014, we see that we currently include approximately 1,000 crop country combinations, including the production of seeds. Approximately 500 are intermediate products, so products from processing. Something more than 80 feed compounds are included. 163 food products such as legumes, cereals, eggs, dairy and meat products. And we also include 4 animal production systems. So broilers, laying hens, pork and beef. On the bottom of your screen, you can see the link to Agri-footprint. Via this link, you can download a list of all the processes available in Agri-footprint version 3. And this list is available for free. Okay, now this brings me to the geographical scope I mentioned earlier. I have prepared, together with the help of a colleague, a visual on geographical scope throughout the different versions of Agri-footprint from version 1 to version 3. So I have used the color scale from light gray to green in order to indicate how the geographical scope, but also the number of processes in Agri-footprint has been increasing. So I will play this animation once, and then I will reward to comment on it. Okay. So I hope it is a bit clear. Let's go back to see it step by step. You've probably noticed the map getting greener. So from version 1 to version 2, here you see that shifting from version 1 to 2, all European Union countries are included, and most of the Scandinavian countries as well. Canada got also greener with the inclusion of more grains in Agri-footprint version 3, and Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela have been also added in scope, which was not the case in Agri-footprint 1. And we also see that Pakistan, India, and China have an expanding scope in version 2 as well. Now, moving to Agri-footprint 3, the map is getting even greener. In this version, most of the countries have remained the same. Most of the countries in scope have remained the same, but we have expanded the scope in cultivation phase with the inclusion of seed production. So the number of processes per country has actually increased. However, we have still added some more countries in this version of Agri-footprint. In Africa, we have included Nigeria for sorghum production and Senegal and Uganda for groundnuts production. And we have also added Peru and Chile for fish meal and oil production. Okay, so I will now move into an example of how a process is modeled in Agri-footprint and how you can calculate impacts throughout the life cycle. So some people might be familiar with the structure of Agri-footprint, but I think this is nice for people who haven't used Agri-footprint so far. So let's take, for instance, the case of a chicken meat production system. In the first production stage, we have the breeding of broilers. This phase requires the input of breeding compound feed, transport of the feed, water, and energy. And within this process, emissions from manure management are calculated. This first production system breeds broiler parents younger than 2 weeks old, which are passing to the second stage of animal farming. There again, several inputs and emissions due to manure are inventoried. And in this second stage, broiler parents are reared and they start to produce broiler parents older than 2 weeks, as well as consumption eggs and hatching eggs. After the production period, the broiler parents are slaughtered, and at the slaughterhouse we have again some inputs and the production of several byproducts and main products. The consumption of eggs are available to the market, and then the hatching eggs will be taken to a hatchery for incubation. In this third system, the one-day chicks are reared in a couple of weeks and eventually slaughtered to produce chicken meat and other feed-grade products. So in Agri-footprint, you have the option to calculate the impact or make a contribution analysis of this whole system, but you can also do the same in any step throughout the life cycle, since the database is composed of unit processes, so you can click into every single step. Let's say we want to zoom into the compound feed for breeding broilers. So there you can see what this feed is made of, so how much of what is entering your system and from which country it's coming from. And you can also run a contribution analysis for the impact of this compound feed to to the total chicken meat life cycle. So you can separate the impacts due to land use change, emissions from soil, and energy, for instance. And I think at this point I will give the floor to Paula so she can demonstrate how Agri-footprint works in SimaPro.
So yeah, let's take a quick look at what was just explained, how this looks in SimaPro itself. And I'm going to focus on this demo specific to Agri-footprint and these processes that we just talked about. I'm not sure if people are familiar with SimaPro and Agri-footprint already, but if you aren't familiar with the software, this will give you a little bit of an overview, but I definitely encourage you to download our free demo software of SimaPro from our website, and you can explore what all the capabilities and possibilities are. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any of your specific questions about SimaPro if you reach out to me directly. So I think the first thing you might notice is that the updated look and feel and the colors, or the color scheme, is slightly different. With the last Agri-footprint release, we created more specific categorizations for the agriculture processes. Over here, you can see the list of all the different categories and all the processes that are available if we click through these different folders. And I should mention actually that over here, we can see the different libraries that are available in SimaPro right now. I've only selected the Agri-footprint economic allocation library, so those are the only processes that you'll see displayed here. So yeah, the new categorizations have proven to be very useful in helping to find what you're looking for, especially with this last release of Agri-footprint, where now we have over 1,000 crop products. These plant categories are pretty specific, and you can find what you need pretty quickly. So yeah, I want to show you an example, the example process that we showed earlier, and I want to try to highlight some of the possibilities and potential uses of the database in SimaPro and emphasize really how transparent this database really is. So this was the process, the broilers for slaughter at farm was the process we were looking at earlier. You can see down here is just some background metadata information, and if we double click, we can open up this process. The documentation tab over here has just some overview metadata information. You might notice that some of these fields have been reorganized. The comment field is now on top instead of the bottom, just some small updates. So this input-output tab corresponds to what was shown to you with all the different inputs and outputs on the PowerPoint slide. So you can see up here, broilers is the output and 16.76 kilograms. And then here are all the inputs listed below. So we have the chickens, the feed broilers, drinking water, transport, electricity and heat, and then down below we have the direct emissions to air, and then if there were any direct emissions to water, soil, or any of these other things, they would be there too. As well as over here, you can see any comments that Blonk had added that are helpful information. And we can also go back and like we were saying earlier, you can really dig down deeper and see how transparent this is by saying, okay, well, what goes into the broiler? So we can go to this process and then open this up and similarly see all the inputs and outputs of that process. So you can trace it back and see all the inputs of all the processes. So let's do a quick calculation. So for this example, let's analyze 1 kilogram using, let's do the recipe 2016 new method that we just implemented. And if we calculate, here are our results, but let's start over here with the network diagram. So here, let's do a 5% cutoff, which just means we're only showing those processes which have greater than 5% impact by global warming potential. So you can change these to whichever impact category you would like. But here is just a visual representation, sort of similar to what was shown on the PowerPoint of here are all the inputs going into this process. And so you can see the chickens and the compound feed broilers are the main two processes. So what goes into the feed broilers, you can see maize, soybean meal, palm oil, etc., and you can trace it back down this way. So just helpful in visualizing where the impacts are coming from. So if we go over here to the Impact Assessment tab, you might recognize these processes listed on top are the inputs that were in listed as inputs and outputs in the process. So we can see where all the impacts lie for each of the impact categories. And here we have several ways to visualize this. We can see it as a table like this, which you could export and build all your own charts and graphs, or if you want to see the chart, you can visualize it this way, and you might notice some new colors here and the new buttons and toolbar on top. And you can see that the compound feed broilers are the driver of impact here, and if you just put your mouse over whichever one you're looking at, it becomes bold on the bottom, so it's easy to see what each of these colors represents. So let's go over to this process contribution tab, and let's continue looking at global warming. So here, if we sort, we can see what processes are contributing the most to global warming potential. And you'll see that soybeans would be the top two contributors at 1.18 kilograms and 1.09 kilograms out of 4.26 total. And so really there's so many different ways to dig into the data and see what contributes to the overall impacts. We can look at it in a chart over here as well, and see what the largest impacts are. So really, just to highlight all the potentials of using this database, there's so many different ways that you can dig into the data. It's really transparent, and I didn't get into all the possibilities here, but I think this gave hopefully an overview of what you can do with it in SimaPro, and I definitely encourage you to reach out to us if you have additional questions about this as well. Is there anything else that, Elena, you guys can think of that you want me to show in SimaPro?
Okay, so at this point I have prepared a general discussion on Agri-footprint and Agri-food LCA studies with Agri-footprint. These are topics that we generally encounter in food LCA studies. So the first topic is about carbon storage at cultivation. In Agri-footprint, we don't consider the carbon storage during cultivation. So the life cycle we are looking at is taking place within a short-term carbon cycle. So we consider that the carbon dioxide uptaken by crops during growth is eventually emitted back to the environment as a recycling process. This is in line with the LCA methodology and impact assessment methods. And this is also reasonable since in Agri-footprint we are modeling systems from cradle to gate. So considering the uptake of carbon dioxide while excluding the end of life of a product can lead to arbitrary or even negative results. so it would be an incorrect practice. So, however, we do consider, for instance, biogenic methane emissions from endoric fermentation. And another topic is that in Agri-footprint we are not modeling the end of life of food. This is also a question we receive frequently. Agri-footprint doesn't include processed foods, so we are our database mainly consists of commodities and some intermediate products from processing. So end of life, like the use phase or the waste treatment, is not within the scope of Agri-footprint. Moreover, attributional modeling is used instead of consequential. These are two different methods of modeling intending to reply to different questions. So attributional modeling, which is the one we are using in Agri-footprint, is about how things are flowing within a chosen temporal window, so pollutants, resources, and exchanges among processes. And this is also the most commonly used method. Consequential modeling, on the other hand, it intends to show how flows change in response to decisions. So this type of modeling would answer the question of what the consequences are of a decision beyond the effect of the actual change. So within the Agri-footprint scope, attributional modeling is the one that is being used. Another issue in LCA, food LCA studies is the crop rotation. Crop rotation is not taken into account in Agri-footprint. In fact, the inclusion of crop rotation in LCAs is a rather complex topic and does not yield concrete results due to several uncertainties. So in a crop rotation system of 4 years, for instance, you should allocate all the impacts of all inputs of chemical fertilizer, animal manure, or green manure to the total crop rotation. However, determining the actual nitrogen interaction between the previous and the following crop is very difficult in practice, and the decomposition of organic matter in time is also very uncertain. So these are few complexities. Another complexity in crop rotation modeling is that there are no actual data on manure application per crop, or the data is rather scarce. And on top of that, defining a sequence of crops is rather hypothetical because farmers are not using a fixed recipe. The crop rotation typically depends on diverse factors such as climate, region conditions, financial incentives, or a disease spread, for instance. So it's in fact rather complex or rather impossible to define a crop rotation system, yeah, being able to model all those flows throughout the rotation. And last topic that I would like to mention is that in Agri-footprint there are no underlying credit systems applied that the user wouldn't be aware of. We do use in a few instances the feature of avoided products for energy recovery within a system, but this is always documented and justified. So yeah, I think that's also a nice thing to mention and to make clear for users. And yeah, coming to the end of this presentation, I would like to mention a few data uncertainties that are rather common in agri-food LCAs. And this has to do with outdated or poor quality data, scattered or no data. The crop yields are also rather uncertain in many cases. Agronomical practices are also quite complex to identify. By this I mean fertilizer application rates, pesticides use, and even manure applications per crop and country. Moreover, the logistics is also a kind of data gap in the agri-food LCAs. There are no actual information on like commercial ports. Prices of products is another topic. We typically use prices of market prices of an average of 5 years in LCAs, but it's not always explicit whether an LCA study is actually applying this average or at which point of the life cycle the price is decided upon. Moreover, food losses is another important gap in the agri-food LCAs. And by this, I mean food losses throughout the supply chain, but also food waste. As far as I know, there are some initiatives to document these losses on a country level, but there is no concrete database still on that. And finally, for the case of waste and wastewater treatment, most of the times typically default or average processes are used to model such a treatment. So all these are uncertainties or limitations oftenly encountered in agri-food LCAs, and I think there is still a lot of space for improvement on that. And this brings me to what is new in the next release of Agri-footprint. So as I mentioned earlier, we expect that the Agri-footprint version 4 will be available in the end of this year. In this new version, we will include company-specific data from Evonik as well as USDA datasets. And I would like to tell you that we are always looking for cooperatives and partnerships. So if you have any data or ideas to share with us, you are very welcome to contact us. And at this point, I think there is some time for questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in the question box. Okay, so there is a question. Can we use this data LCA analysis in the US? So yeah, this question refers to whether US datasets are available. So I think we have covered this question during the presentation, but again, we already include some United States data in our footprint, but in the next release, in the end of this year, we will include a broader list of inventories, and yeah, based on the USDA, of course. There is another question: has been Agri-footprint data been used within the PEF pilots? We have used the Agri-footprint in the PEF screening studies, indeed. There is another question about the seed production. So the question is, how do you define parent plants as inputs for seed production? So we currently use the normal crop production as the basis for our calculations, and we make a correction on the yield. So we consider a specific percentage of yield of the normal crop production to model the seed production system. All this information are also available in the methodology report part 2 that you can find on the website of Agri-footprint. There you can also find information on fertilizer and pesticide modeling. This is also a question we receive very often. There's a quite extended description on how we model these inputs. There is another question about whether we collaborate with other initiatives, such as the World Food Database, in order to have the same modeling rules. We are regularly in contact with other databases, and we discuss methodological practices and choices, as well as differences, but we don't have any formal collaboration yet with any of these initiatives. There is also a question about whether the presentation can be made available for reference. Yes, I said at the beginning, all the handouts from this presentation will be sent to you via email, and the recordings will be also available on our website, as well as a Q&A session. Yeah, there will be also a link on a PDF or something like that with all the questions and answers. There's a lot of traffic right now in the chat box. Maybe I can pick another one. If I want to upgrade to Agri-footprint 3 from 2 version, is it compatible with SimaPro 8.3? Maybe that's a question more for Play.
Yeah. Yes, you should be able to import it with SimaPro 8.3, but I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to update to the latest version. You won't, if you don't have a license to SimaPro, then you won't be able to get the update if you don't have a current license. So, while it's possible to import into 8.3, I'm not sure why someone would want to do that.
Okay. Yeah, good. There is another question about crop rotations. Will crop rotations be looked into future versions, or is that too complex? We have looked through the crop rotation schemes in some projects that we have at Blonk outside of Agri-footprint, and we haven't discussed yet of including crop rotation in Agri-footprint itself. Of course, you can use Agri-footprint information to build it up by yourself, but I think it's rather complex to be implemented in a uniform way throughout the database, and to be actually useful for users. But I think it's a very interesting topic, and yeah. A lot of people are thanking us for the information and for the presentation, so you're very welcome. You can always come back to us with questions or feedback via email, of course, after the end of this webinar. There's another question, how you deal with manure processing and incorporation into the fields. We currently don't include manure processing like fermentation into slurry or other manure processing technologies. Transport of manure is included and is allocated to the plant production system, but the manure management and emissions are allocated into the animal production system. Somebody is asking if we have included the microalgae. Oh, sorry, I lost the question. If we have included the microalgae in the agricultural sector for biofuels, but no, that's not the case. Unfortunately, we don't include that. And as I said earlier, you can on the website of Agri-footprint, you can download for free a list of processes and countries that are included in Agri-footprint. There is a question about carbon storage. So why are there no implementation for carbon storage for crops? So yeah, as I said, in Agri-footprint, we consider like the biogenic CO2 uptake by the crop as returning back to the environment within the time frame that we are looking at, and so this is a short-term carbon cycle. So there is no carbon credit on that, and yeah, we don't also document it as metadata, for instance. I think all the impact assessment methods have a characterization factor of 0 for biogenic CO2. So you can add it basically in your inventory, but nothing will happen with that. I think there's a question for SimaPro. If we have already a license for SimaPro 8.3, is there a cost for updating it to SimaPro 8.4?
So that will depend on whether you have an active service contract or not. So if you have a service contract, then there's no cost to updating. But if you want to send me an email, I can put you in touch with the right person to find out about that. Or if you just try to download the update on our website, it'll either let you do it or it won't. So you should have got, if you have an active service contract, you should have gotten an email with the instructions of how to update everything to the latest version.
Another question is about does Agri-footprint investigate other type of functional units rather than mass, as for instance nutritional value? In Agri-footprint, we most usually provide information on the energy content in the comment fields and also things like dry matter content, but the functional unit is still on a mass base. This is something we are working on for the future. And I think this brings us to the end. As I said earlier, all these Q&As will become available to you after this webinar. And you can always come back to us with questions. So thank you for your attention, and thank you also, Paula, for this joint presentation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, let's keep in contact via websites and social media. And yeah, have a good day.